Welcome to the spoken tutorial on fill, color and stroke using Inkscape. In this tutorial, we will learn about fill color in objects, give objects an outline, various types of gradients, and stroke paint and style. For this tutorial, I am using Ubuntu Linux 12.04 OS, Inkscape version 0.48.4. Let's open Inkscape. For this, go to Dash Home and type Inkscape. You can open Inkscape by clicking on the logo. Let's open the assignment.svg file that we created earlier. I had saved it in my Documents folder. These are the three shapes we created in an earlier assignment. Recall that we had learned to change color using the color palette at the bottom of the interface. Now, we will learn how to fill colors of various types using fill and stroke. Let's go to Object menu and click on the Fill and Stroke option from the drop-down list. Notice that the Fill and Stroke dialog box has opened on the right side of the interface. There are three tabs in this dialog box: Fill, Stroke Paint and Stroke Style. Now, we will click on the rectangle in the canvas area. Observe that the options and the icons in the Fill and Stroke dialog box get enabled. First, we will learn about the Fill tab. Notice there are 6 icons under the Fill tab. Let us learn what these icons do. The first icon is called No Paint. It indicates that the object will not be filled with any color. Click on the icon and notice the change in the rectangle. The color of the rectangle has been removed. The next icon is Flat Color. It helps to fill a solid color into an object. Click on the flat color icon and observe the change of color in the rectangle shape. Under flat color, notice there are 5 sub-tabs. By default, RGB tab is selected. Under RGB tab, there are 4 sliders. The first 3 sliders indicates the intensity of red, green and blue colors. We can change the color by moving these sliders in left or right directions. Observe the color change in the rectangle as I do so. The fourth slider is the alpha slider. With this, we can increase or decrease the opacity level of the color from opaque to fully transparent. As I move these 4 sliders, observe that the RGBA value of the color shown in this box changes automatically. Let me move the sliders once again so that you can observe this change. We can change the color manually by changing the values of each color in the boxes at the right of the sliders. Let me change the value of red to 100, green to 50 and blue to 150. Notice the color of the rectangle has now changed to violet. I keep the alpha level as 255 since I do not want to reduce the opacity level. The next tab is HSL and it stands for hue, saturation and lightness respectively. We can use the hue slider to get a base color. I move the slider towards the left direction to get a base of green color. We can adjust the saturation of the base color using the saturation slider. Observe the change in the saturation level by moving the slider in left or right directions. The lightness slider adjusts the lightness of the base color. With this option, one can vary the shade of the base color from pure white to pure black or any shade in between. As before, the alpha slider is used to increase or decrease the opacity level from opaque to fully transparent. The next tab is CMYK, which denotes cyan, magenta, yellow and black respectively. By moving these sliders, we can increase or decrease the intensity or the depth of the base color. This color mixing option is useful when design projects are to be printed on commercial presses. Next is the Wheel tab. This is an alternative representation of the HSL color mixer. We can select the base hue by clicking on the color ring that is based on the standard color wheel. So, I will click on yellow shade to select a base of yellow color. Within the color circle, there is triangle with a small circle inside it. Just click on it and drag it inside the triangle and observe the color change in the rectangle. The CMS tab will only be of real interest to those working in color managed environments. For now, we will skip this tab. Next, let us learn how to create a linear gradient. Go to Canvas and click on the circle. Now, come back to the Fill and Stroke dialog box and click on the linear gradient icon. Observe the gradient fill in the circle. The gradient will be given a name ending with a series of random numbers. In my interface, the number is linear gradient 3794. In yours, it may be different. We can change the gradient by clicking the Edit button, which is right below the linear gradient number button. This will open up the Gradient Editor dialog box. The top button in this box is named Stop, followed by some random numbers, and it contains a drop-down menu. If you click the arrows on this drop-down, you will see two stop options. The first one denotes the pure base color. The other one is half checkerboard, indicating that it is transparent. Select the second option, that is the transparent stop option. Go to the stop color below. Change the RGB values to whichever color you like by moving the sliders. Keep alpha value at 255 to make the gradient fully visible. Close the Gradient Editor dialog box. Now, we can change the gradient angle. To do so, click on Node tool from the toolbox on the left of the interface. This is located right below the Selector tool. This will display a line on the circle. This line represents the gradient. This currently overlaps with the square handle and the arc handle of the circle. We will have to move the gradient line handles a little bit so that we can see the handles clearly. Click and drag the circular handle or the square handle to change the position where the gradient starts and ends. We can also rotate the direction of the gradient by moving the circular handle as demonstrated. Now, we will learn how to use radial gradient. Click on the icon and observe the gradient change in the circle. The radial gradient is formed in a circular shape. Notice one square handle and two circular handles. Click on the middle square handle to move the gradient starting point. I will move it to the bottom left. Click and drag on any one of these circular handles to make changes in the gradient. Observe the change in the height and width of the gradient shape. We can find the gradient tool in the toolbox also. Let's click on it and come back to our circle. Notice that the cursor has now changed into a plus sign with capital I. Now, click anywhere inside the circle and drag. Notice the change in the gradient. Now, click anywhere outside the circle and drag. Notice the change in the gradient. Next, we will learn how to overlay various patterns on shapes. Go to Toolbox, click on Selector tool and then click on the star shape. In the Fill and Stroke dialog box, click on the pattern icon. Notice the color of the star has changed to a stripe pattern. There is a drop-down menu under the pattern fill. Click on the arrows to see the available patterns. Let's click on Checkerboard and observe the change in the star shape. You can use any of these available patterns shown here. We will learn about swatch in another tutorial. The last icon called Unset Paint is used to unset the color of the selected object to black. Click on the icon and observe the color change in the star. It has changed to black. Now, let us learn how to give stroke or an outline to an object. To do this, we have to use the Stroke Paint tab. Now, click on Stroke Paint tab and click on the rectangle. The icons under the Stroke Paint tab are the same as the Fill tab. They function in the same manner as well. With the first icon, that is no paint, we remove the outline of the shape. Next, we will click on Flat Color icon. We see a black color outline around the rectangle shape. We can increase or decrease the thickness of the outline using the Stroke Style tab. Let's keep the width parameter as 10. We can also change the units into percentage, point, etc. depending on your requirement. I will keep the unit as pixels. Let's go back again to the Stroke Paint tab. We can change the color of the stroke by moving the sliders under the RGB tab. Observe the color change in the outline as I do so. Explore the other flat color options such as HSL, CMYK, Wheel and CMS on your own. Now, let me click on the linear gradient. This gives a gradient outline to the rectangle shape. The gradients that we used earlier will appear in the drop-down list here. We can use any of those two. Let me give red and blue gradient outline to my rectangle. In a similar way, we can use the remaining stroke icons and give some interesting patterns and gradient outlines to our objects. Next, we will learn about stroke style. Click on it. We already learned how to modify the width of the stroke. Now, let's look at the three join icons, namely miter join, round join and bevel join. By default, the stroke is in miter join. Let me zoom into one of the corners of the rectangle for a better view. Now, let's click on the round join to give a round corner to the stroke. Observe the changes in the edges of the stroke. Next, we will click on the bevel join option to create a bevel corner. Various dash patterns are available in the dashes drop-down menu. Using this, we can give different dash patterns to the stroke and vary the width too. Next is the cap option. This basically works on line strokes. Go to Toolbox, click on Freehand tool. So, let us draw a line with the help of Freehand tool. Now, let us zoom in to the end of the line. By default, Butt Cap is selected and it gives a flat edge to the end. Now, I will click on the round cap to give a rounded edge. Next is the square cap, which gives a flat and extended edge to the ends of the line. There are three markers right below the dashes tab, which places markers on the middle of the path. Click on the drop-down menu of each marker to see the available list. Under Start Markers, let me select Torso. We will select Curve In as mid markers. For the end markers, we will select Legs. Observe, a cartoon shape is formed on the canvas. Lastly, notice two sliders at the bottom of the Fill and Stroke dialog box, namely Blur and Opacity. Let's first select the rectangle again. The Blur slider is used to give a blur effect to an object. I will click on the slider and move it towards the right. Observe that the rectangle becomes blurred as I move the slider more and more to the right. The opacity slider is used to give transparency to a shape. Move the slider to the right and observe the changes in the shape. Let us summarize. In this tutorial, we learned to fill color in objects using the fill and stroke options, give strokes or outlines to shapes, various types of gradients, and stroke paint and stroke styles. Here is an assignment for you. Create a pentagon filled with a linear gradient of red and yellow color with a blue stroke of width 5 pixels. An ellipse filled with wavy pattern and change the opacity to 70%. A line with a width of 10 with start markers as arrow 1 L start and end markers as tail. Your completed assignment should look like this. Watch the video available at the following link. It summarizes the spoken tutorial project. If you do not have good bandwidth, you can download and watch it. The Spoken Tutorial project team conducts workshops using spoken tutorials, gives certificates for those who pass an online test. For more details, please write to contact@spoken-tutorial.org. Spoken Tutorial project is a part of the Talk to a Teacher project. It is supported by the National Mission on Education through ICT, MHRD, Government of India. More information on this mission is available at spoken-tutorial.org/nmeict-intro. We have come to the end of this tutorial. This is Aarti and Saurabh from IIT Bombay signing off. Thanks for joining.